Hello, and welcome to Masters with Masters. I'm Ed Hoffman, and this is a joint ESA-NASA educational event which brings together two master practitioners and leaders to share their experiences, stories, and reflections on their career in space. And we're extremely fortunate to have the leaders of the European Space Agency and NASA, Jean-Jacques Dordain and Charlie Bolden, to join us today, and we really appreciate you taking the time out over the next 50 minutes to share some of your thoughts and reflections with us. I also want to indicate that we're going to really want this to be an interactive event, and so we have question pads for you to write any questions you have. We have a lot of young professionals and the student generation with us, so this is an opportunity to really ask questions of people who've had long, very successful careers in space. And so as you write down your questions, just raise your hand, and one of the folks we have on the side will collect those and basically bring them up stage so that we can ask them of our guests here. So again, I want to thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. And I want to start with one of the themes that has come through from both of you loud and clear, which is the importance of international collaboration. And I'll start with Mr. Dordain, because one of the things I've heard you talk about repeatedly is the importance of international collaboration in space, and also the fact that one of the things that ESA can teach the world is about collaboration, since it's the basis for all the work and agreements that you do. Can you talk about what are some of the factors that are necessary to be successful when setting up an international collaboration and working together on a mission?
Yes, ESA is an organization where international cooperation is a daily work. I must say that it's 18 countries putting their resources to make science and to develop services to the citizens. And this is people from 19 nationalities working together on a daily basis. So that is already ESA per se is an international corporation, but more than that, ESA is cooperating with all space power, starting with NASA. As I said many times, ESA has been created in cooperation with NASA. The first scientific satellite that we have developed in Europe were developed in cooperation with NASA, meaning that we don't know what means that ESA not working with NASA. So it's we are working since 40 years together, but we are now working with Russia, with India, with China, with Japan, with all space powers, and also, and I insist on that, with all countries which have no space means, which is also an important factor, meaning that we are sharing what we are doing with the ones who have not access directly to space systems. So yes, it's an international cooperation, and for me the essence of international cooperation is mutual understanding. I must say that what is lacking the most in humanity is mutual understanding, and we have to develop a mutual understanding. Not easy, yeah. As I said many times. Cooperating is very difficult. It's always easier not to cooperate. But at least we can demonstrate that this is successful and that we can reach common objectives together. And that it's certainly one of the biggest lessons learned coming from ESA and from our cooperation, in particular with NASA.
So mutual understanding being obviously a key and working towards that. And Mr. Bolden, I know that you've been involved from time being an astronaut. First shuttle mission was joint Russia, United States, International Space Station, and most of the science missions are international. You've been emphasizing heavily that for us to be successful, we need to be cooperating internationally. What are some of the things that NASA would be looking to do, and how are we successful when we work these international collaborations?
I will try to answer your question, but I'll kind of echo something that Jean-Jacques said, and I will remind people that NASA is also a collaboration of 50 independent nations. And unfortunately, we have two bodies that has 100 representatives of those 50 nations in one body, and I'll get the count wrong, but 454 or something like that. Is that, Frank, is that close? 435, representatives of the 50 nations. So, and I don't say that in jest. If you look at where we are today, I mean, today is the 29th of September, and I am sitting here agonizing over the two bodies coming together on an authorization bill, which is the very first piece that we need for NASA to have a spending bill. And it is ongoing negotiations. And, we're hoping that what we get is something that is very usable, that will allow me to continue to work with Jean-Jacques and our other international partners. But my heritage, since coming out of college has been doing international relations. I am a 34-year veteran of the Marine Corps. And from the very beginning, it became imperative to me, it became very evident to me how important international cooperation was. If you look at the way that we do our business around the world in peacekeeping or in disaster relief or anything, it is always an international collaboration that gets things done and gets them done effectively. So for us, as Jean-Jacques said, getting smaller nations or less capable nations involved in space exploration, giving them an opportunity to do something that they would never be able to do on their own by working with ESA or JAXA or the Canadian Space Agency or Roscosmos or us, I think is vital. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to open up space exploration to countries that otherwise would not be able to do it on their own.
And part of,
Yes, may I say something? Because I would like to report that it's an anecdote, but since we are not only bureaucrats, but we are also persons. Just to say, the first time I heard about Charlie Bolden in my life, I was at ESA in charge of ISS utilization, and I was in charge of the astronaut office, meaning that I was the boss of the astronauts. Since I could not become myself an astronaut, so I could become their boss. And our astronauts, these astronauts, they were training in Houston, Texas. And I remember very well that these guys, they were telling me that at the beginning when they were at Houston, there was meetings among astronauts, and the European ones, they were not invited to the meetings of the ESA astronauts. And the ones who have taken them by hand and brought them to this meeting of NASA astronauts was Charlie Bolden. And I was reported that. And I must say that for me, the name of Charlie Bolden is really linked to that. He is the one who has taken the European astronauts and brought them to the meetings of the NASA astronauts. And at least for that, this is an international minded person.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's a good story in terms of, you talked about mutual understanding and, what goes into that. But that was obviously an inclusive act to say, come with us. And that may be part of, being successful internationally, inclusiveness.
But behind any cooperation, there are persons. And the personal relationship is very important. Yes, there is cooperation between NASA and ESA, and that it's since 40 years. But behind that cooperation, there is a cooperation between Charlie Bolden and Jean-Jacques Dordain. There are cooperation between Bill Gerstenmaier and Simonetta Di Pippo. There are cooperation between persons. And in the mutual understanding, there is the transparency and the mutual trust between persons, and that makes the cooperation successful.
If I can offer something, to be quite honest, in the U.S., there are two terms that we use all the time in business, and they are diversity and inclusion. And most people, when the term diversity is mentioned, they think of race and gender. If you talk to anybody in NASA, they will tell you that what I try to emphasize is that diversity is a difference of ideas, a difference of philosophies, a difference of skills, a difference of geographic background. It's just differences that make us strong. What makes the family of spacefaring nations today so strong, and what for me makes the International Space Station perhaps the greatest example of what you get when you put nations together of diverse interests and backgrounds, you get an absolutely phenomenal technological achievement, never before done by humankind, if you really stop and think about it. I remember my sitting with President Obama and a group of school children on a day that he loves to do downlink TV with school kids, and we did it one day, and I think it was STS 129 or so, or 130, and it was when we were getting ready to birth, or we had just birthed HTV to the International Space Station. And the president was having it described to him by the astronauts. We had a Canadian astronaut, an American female astronaut who was operating the Canadian arm to capture a Japanese satellite and bring it into an international space station where we had 15 member nations. I watched President Obama's face as they explained it to him, and he is an internationalist. But I think even he, for a moment, was flabbergasted by the achievement of a group of that diversity. The inclusiveness means that we listen to everybody's voice. No matter how small they are, everyone wants to be heard. And so I think that's what we try to do, is we try to bring everybody to the table to give them an opportunity to say, okay, we all want to explore. And we all have an idea about how to do that. So diversity and inclusiveness is a term that has become very popular in the United States, but it has to mean something to people.
Right. Different thoughts, different ideas, exactly, bringing something to the table, being open to that. One of the things, obviously, space is in a transitional mode. Maybe historically, the first age was very much competition in terms of a race, and now you're talking about new steps to go beyond low Earth orbit and the importance of international cooperation. How do you see the international cooperation impacting the next generation of space that goes beyond low Earth orbit? And you've also mentioned some of the political players. How does that make things easier or harder as we move ahead?
Jean-Jacques yesterday was mentioning the fact that competition is always good. And I agree with him. Competition is always good. I have 9 NASA centers in a federally funded research and development center, the Jet Propulsion Lab. We have very friendly competition among those 10 organizations. And what they're competing for is ideas. When we talk about going to an asteroid or to a near-Earth object, I have 10 different ideas about how we should approach that mission. We will come to an agreement at some point as to what is the best of those 10 ideas, and we'll execute that. We'll also involve our international partners. And so there should be very healthy competition of ideas. Who has the best idea for how to accomplish a particular goal? That's competition. And everybody wants their idea to be the one that this international group agrees to utilize as the way we're going to do it. So I think if we ever stop competing, at least for ideas, then we're dead.
Yes, absolutely. I think that cooperation should not prevent competition, because competition, this is certainly the best stimulus to get the best ideas, and we need that. And as I said many times, the best ideas are not coming proportionally from the GNP. They can come from small countries or representatives from small countries. So we need competition, but provided this competition is organized to reach common objectives. So I think that the cooperation is to set the common objectives. What are we ready to go to do together? And I think that this is the essence of cooperation. But to reach these common objectives, I think that the competition is very healthy, and that it's the first remark. The second remark is that for me, the cooperation must be as open as possible. This cannot be a closed club. Let's take ESA. ESA started with 6 member states. We are now 18, 19 in 3 months from now, and we shall grow to 25. The same on human space flight. 69, the US flag was the only one on the moon. But soon after, 75, 2 flags together in orbit, USSR and USA, and then 4 flags with the space station Freedom, and 5 flags now with the International Space Station. So I think that the only way for a partnership to be alive and to be sustainable is to stay open. And this is the reason why, in my view, the vision for international cooperation is to have more and more cooperation between more and more actors, because we have to address global issues. And the only way to address global issues is to have a global approach.
Yeah. It sounds, from listening to both of you talk, it's a balance between cooperation and competition in terms of getting the best of ideas. And it sounds as if it's actually improving engineering, because if you're getting the best ideas from wherever they come, then obviously you're able to improve things in a way that you can't if you have a more limited audience.
Yes, we have to be better and better. It's what we said yesterday to the young generation, because we met the students. And I told them, you have no choice but to be better than we are. Because space activities are more and more complex, because we are going more and more farther, and we are doing more and more complex things, meaning that we have to invent the technologies. Meaning that the next generation must always be much better than the previous generation. And our young colleagues, they have to be better, and they are better. And this is the reason why we need the best ideas and the best experts, and that will come from competition. But competition is not antagonist to cooperation. I think that provided we have common objectives.
Yeah, and both of you are talking obviously about getting better. And so it makes me think about the whole notion of knowledge and lessons learned. And obviously, particular NASA, ESA, other space nations have this experience now of the International Space Station. And I think you've mentioned before, Mr. Dordain, that that's kind of a learning area where we can start laying out governance frameworks for how do we work large, complex missions in the future. Can you maybe talk to that? What have we learned, and how do we capture learning?
I think that we have learned a lot making the space station. We have learned, first of all, how to work together. I must say that we at ESA, we are working like NASA, because as I said, we have been created in cooperation with NASA. So we have the technical culture of NASA. So we have not so many problems to understand each other in terms of engineering. But the day we have worked with Russia, I can tell you that we have learned a lot from working with Russia, because they have developed their space activities with a unique approach. And we have learned a lot, and I think that they have learned a lot from United States and Europe, from Japan. Meaning that we have to invent a common culture. Not to adopt the other culture. And it's what I am saying also to my colleagues of ESA. Since we are 19 nationalities, we have to invent a new culture. When I was working in the United States, I was the only non-US working in Rocketdyne, so I had no choice but to adopt the US culture, because I could not mix one guy, one French, to a bunch of US engineers. So I had to adopt the US culture. While when you are working together, you have to invent a new culture, which is taking the best of what each partner can bring. So this is the best lessons learned. And the second lessons learned is the solidarity. We have crossed a lot of difficulties to develop the space station. We have crossed even catastrophe together. And unfortunately, the accident, the Columbia accident, as I have expressed myself, was not a NASA catastrophe. It was a catastrophe of the partners. And I felt really to be part of that. But the solidarity has worked, and we could succeed in completing the space station by that solidarity. Now, there are also lessons learned for the future, and as I said many times, what I wish is to take the lessons learned of having having a common transportation policy for the ISS. We have all taken unilateral decisions on transportation, and I am not sure that the result of that is the most fantastic result that we can have, because we have some duplications and we have some gaps in our transportation system to ISS. So we can do better, and we shall do better. So we can share the lessons learned, and all the partners, they have spent a lot of time to develop the lessons learned from the space station, and I can tell you that it's a book like that, a lot of pages and a lot of recommendations, meaning that we can improve the partnership, and we shall improve the partnership.
Right. There's many areas, obviously, you cover in terms of learning lessons, and I wanted to ask Mr. Bolden, what are the things that you feel NASA needs to do, not only as the administrator, but you've been an astronaut, you've been a part of these missions. How do we build a ability to learn from working together on space station, on shuttle, on the big scientific missions, in line of the fact that everyone's always looking towards the next mission? How do we learn towards what's happened in the past?
Well, I think we learn two ways. We look at our experiences. We always talk about learning lessons in blood. But we also bring in fresh blood. One of the reasons that Jean-Jacques and I love to talk with young groups like are here at this Congress or at the Space Generation Congress that met before we began is because they have an energy that we don't have. I like to think I am a young, energetic person, but when I hang around some of these 20, 30-year-olds, let me tell you, they put you to shame. And they have new, fresh ideas because they have looked at the way that we have done things, and they've said, that will never work. Or, yeah, it works, but it can be better. And so I think we learn by observing the mistakes that my generation has made and trying to learn from them. But we also learn when we, again, become more inclusive in our planning, and we bring in young, fresh ideas from some of the people who are represented here and who will ask some of the questions that we hear. For NASA, that's very difficult. I tell people all the time, I am incredibly proud to be the administrator of NASA, but I'm probably the most behind person in the whole agency. One, because of my age and because of my own personal experiences. I am a person who came from 1960s and 70s technology vehicles traveling into space. The people who work for me today, the young astronauts, they fly, 21st century vehicles that I never even saw. And they have a hard time getting into a space shuttle, for example, that I brag has a glass cockpit. Well, yeah, it is a glass cockpit, but that's only in form, it's glass. Right. But the glass cockpit that uses open architecture and these kinds of things is not there because that's just the way we designed it. Newer vehicles are going to have to be different, and they will help us get there. Utilization of commercial entities for travel to space. That's foreign to us, doing it the way that we're going to have to do it. We are always involved with commercial entities because everything we buy comes from a commercial entity. But it's how we operate that's going to be dramatically different in terms of how we access low Earth orbit. And it's causing us a lot of angst right now, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of issues that you've raised. One of the things that I know I'm going to get questions from the audience we have here in Prague, and so when you're ready, I guess, come up and give them to me. But I'll use this as an opportunity for another thing. You've talked about a lot of issues, both of you. What do you see as some of the key shared challenges, things that you really need to be able to address together? Obviously, there's a lot of technical things like orbital debris, and there's also the social things of maybe creating a new culture of being effective. What's on your minds as leaders of these organizations in space that are really the things cooperatively we need to address? What are the key shared challenges?
Well, I hate to bother everybody with mundane things, but the number one challenge, I think, for all of us, I've had several meetings this morning, as has Jean-Jacques, and in every meeting, economics comes up, budgets, and funding for space exploration is an issue for all of us. People say, but why is that a problem? And it's because the number of people who really grasp the importance of exploration, is relatively small. I think everybody says they understand. But when it comes to, okay, I'm going to go into my wallet and I'm going to put money on this, people find all kinds of competing interests. So finance is a common interest of every space agency that I know. Integrating new technologies is an issue because that costs something to do that. It doesn't come for free. And transitioning the workforce from old technology to new technology. Those are things that I think we all face.
So budget, getting the money, new technologies, integrating it, and the workforce, which obviously gets everything done. It makes me think about what comes first. Do you know how much money you have and then you build off of that, or do you have a strategy and then you get the money? Maybe you can think about that. But Mr. Dent, what are your thoughts in terms of the shared challenges?
Well, I think that I share the challenges which are mentioned by Charlie. I think that as I said yesterday, we have already a big challenge, which is to make our mission successful. Right. I can tell you that each launch, each new spacecraft is for me, I am never cool when I have a launch or when I have a new spacecraft going to orbit, because we are working with advanced technologies and there are always technical risks. So our duty is first to have missions successful. And the second challenge is, again, what I said yesterday, it's to develop a mutual understanding between the space world and the world of citizens. I think that we have a lot to do there, because I think that there is not yet an awareness in the society, and therefore in the political governments, which are just the essence of the citizens, on the importance of space for the future of planet Earth. I think that we have a lot of challenge ahead of us, be it for environment, for security, for energy, and that space is not the unique answer, but space is part of that future. And we have to develop that understanding, and connecting the space world and the real world is a challenge for me, because we are a world of engineers, a world of scientists. Not easy to make the citizens understanding that we are not doing that only for pleasure, but also to make their future possible.
Right, which even it broadens the collaboration to people who communicate and share and spread the story about the importance of space. I have questions from the audience. I'm going to ask those, but I have to ask one other question. Does working international missions make it easier, or does it make it harder when you're trying to establish some of the directions that we want to go in terms of space?
I will give you, I talk about three things. Programs have to be affordable. You have to be able to live within a budget. They have to be sustainable, which means they have to last in the United States over multiple administrations and multiple Congresses. And I always give the International Space Station as my best example. The International Space Station is sustainable and has lasted as long as it has because it is an international collaboration, and it is very difficult for the United States or any other nation to turn and walk away from it because it's the result of a treaty. And so for me, anything I can make international means that it stands a chance, whether it's remote, but it stands a chance of being sustainable. In my system of government, when it is just U.S. or just American, it changes every 4 years, or sometimes every 2 years. So, I think it is critical that we do as much as we can in an international, from an international perspective.
Right.
No, I think that, again, for me, international cooperation, and this is the daily lessons learned from ESA, they are harder and they are slower to put in place. That it's very clear. But when they are put in place, they are much more solid, because to get out from a partnership, it's much more difficult. And they are more successful because we are putting more expertise in that development. So, yes, harder and slower
Yeah.
to put in place, but after that, more solid and certainly more successful.
Right. So work on international missions, since you have a better chance of having them happen. Let me ask some of the questions from our audience here in Prague at the International Astronautical Congress. Here's a question for both of you. For young professionals, or sometimes not so young, it's sometimes frustrating to deal with the huge public service machine, in quotes. In your view, what are the best skills or skills that you've developed that help you to deal with this maze and to keep your sanity? So I guess in an environment of so much administrative, maybe oversight, bureaucracy, different stakeholders, what are the skills necessary to be successful and become leaders of ESA and NASA and keep your sanity?
I think one of the best skills is a skill communication. You have to be able to tell people what it is that you want to do. You have to be able to express adequately to people of diverse cultures and diverse interests what it is that you want to do. The other skill, I think it is a skill. It's a gift, but it's a skill, and it is the ability to try to remain calm in the face of adversity. You could pull your hair out. Any of us could on any given day. That's true. As you look at both of us, you're going, but there is a need to try to remain calm in the face of everything that's going on around you, because otherwise you'll get nothing done at all.
Right. And that's how you help keep your sanity, with the communications and the openness. And any thoughts on keeping sanity?
No, I would. Okay, I don't know if I have kept sanity, but I am trying. Okay, I share what Charlie was saying. I would add maybe I fully share the fact that we have to stay calm and to be patient also, because I am the first one to be frustrated by the slowness of public investment. This is true that private investment is much quicker, and that public investment is always slower. And you have to be patient, but you have to be determined, because you should not give up so quickly. And this is the reason why you have to be persistent. So it's patient, cool, and persistent. And the second thing which is very important is not to try to solve technical problems by political solutions. I think that this is very important, to leave to the engineers the technical problems and the technical solutions. And that is very, very important.
And I think in every case, I always ask people, bring me the right answer. Bring me the correct technical answer, the correct technical solution to the problems that face us, and then let me worry about the politics. Please don't consider political implications of what it is we're working on, because we're going to come up with the wrong answer. Right. A politically expedient answer is never the right answer for an organization that deals with life and death and basically the survival of the species, to be quite. And I know I'm being very dramatic here, but that's what we do. If you're talking about dealing with NEOs, they can hurt the planet, and if we try to ignore the fact that they exist because it's not politically expedient to think about them, one of these days we could become like the dinosaurs. And I don't want to be the NASA administrator when that happens. So I want people in NASA and our partner agencies to bring us the correct technical solution to problems, and let us go into the political arena and try to figure out how we're either going to be able to do that, or we're going to make a compromise. And compromise is all that again, I think compromise is a skill. Not everybody has the skill to compromise. Many people today, at least in my country, feel that compromise is a weakness. That if you are willing to compromise, then you are not going to win. If you are not willing to compromise, in my mind, you will never win.
Right. Yeah. So there's the skills of, you have to, first of all, love what you do.
Oh, we're passionate.
Yeah, and then also the ability to obviously work with others, and you emphasize we need to make decisions based on sound engineering, maybe sound science, and don't worry so much about the politics. That'll take care of it. You got to keep working that, but keep moving forward.
We have to take care of the politics.
Right.
We are receiving money from governments and taxpayers, so
right.
obviously I am not ignoring politics. It's a significant part of my job. But what I was saying is that there are some technical problems that we have to solve because we are making a technically difficult job. What we are doing is difficult, and mixing political motivations and technical problems that can start to be to the detriment of our success, and this is where we have to, and this is I think that the role of the administrator or the director general is to sort out the technical problems and the political problems. The two are there, but not mixing.
Here's another question, and it starts by saying all big organizations have lots of bureaucracy, but that may be a thing of the past if you leverage the new communication technologies. How do you feel about using the new technologies that young people are using, but that people high in the hierarchy may not be using? So there's a lot of social technologies, I guess Facebook and Twitter and whole bunch of these kinds of things. How do you feel that helps in terms of working together?
I must say, this is certainly my age, but I don't think that the bureaucracy is coming from a lack of technology. The bureaucracy, and it's always what I say to my colleagues of ESA, a significant part of the bureaucracy is coming from a lack of trust among each other. And I can tell you that I see that on my desk every night. I have a bunch of papers to sign, and more than 50% of these papers are written because of a lack of trust among people. And there is always a lot of signatures because there is a lack of trust. And I am saying to my colleagues, I am the first victim of the bureaucracy at ESA. But the best way to lighten the bureaucracy is to trust your neighbor. Because myself, when I trust someone, I don't have to write a memo and to sign a memo. I just call him or I see him. And frankly speaking, I prefer to see my colleagues than to even to call them or to write an email. But when I trust someone, I don't need to write a memo or to have a written agreement with that. And this is a problem. Yes, we have a bureaucracy. Obviously, we cannot suppress the bureaucracy. When you are working with 18 governments, I must say that you have to accept the bureaucracy. But again, a significant part of the bureaucracy is coming from a lack of trust, either among member states or among colleagues inside ESA. And that it's a big problem, because you cannot buy trust. You have just to build up trust, and that takes time.
So collaboration through trust, and the technologies can help you, but they're not going to replace something that's not there, it sounds like.
No, I can tell you that we recently introduced a new fantastic informatic tool at ESA, and I have not measured the difference in terms of bureaucracy.
Okay. Mr. Bolden?
I echo everything Jean-Jacques has said.
Okay. So build on the people relationships and seeing and meeting and building up the trust. Another question is, how do you see the possibility to have emerging space nations send astronauts and or experiments to the International Space Station in order to advance their space programs? And what challenges do you see related to that? So emerging nations getting involved in experiments and astronauts on the ISS, challenges and opportunities.
One of the things we talked about here, as well as when we were in Tokyo with our heads of agency last year, was how do we bring other nations into the involvement in the International Space Station? And we use two terms. We use partners and participants. And I think some people heard me yesterday say that the partnership is pretty set, and it was established by treaty, and it's a very, very complex interaction of nations that reach these agreements. And when you mess with it, you put the whole partnership in jeopardy. So I like the agreement that we all reached last year, which was encouraging each member agency to seek partners with whom they can work to collaborate on experiments or projects and bring them on board the International Space Station as a collaborator or a new participant. And I think that way we will be able to integrate many, many more nations who otherwise would never do it on their own. Right. The other thing I'll say that I really want to emphasize this. I think we talk about the International Space Station as if it is the ultimate destination and it is the end of the world. The International Space Station is the beginning. We always talk about commercial space. If the only destination is the International Space Station, then there will never be a successful commercial space industry. There has to be multiple destinations, and many of those destinations are in what we call I think we call it what path, variable path or mini path or whatever, but it's going to different destinations beyond low Earth orbit. But in low Earth orbit, there need to be multiple destinations to which commercial entities can go. Otherwise, we can't build a real viable industry. So I really encourage universities, businesses, everybody to create other destinations other than the International Space Station.
Right. So there are opportunities, and we have to be aware we need to keep going, more and more towards the future.
There are endless opportunities if we allow ourselves to think of them, and that's why I say young people. And young is a relative term, but some of the people who are here at this Congress, I will not be surprised to see some of them within the year start their own business, and they're going to collaborate with somebody who is going to create a single module that will orbit Earth in equatorial orbit, and someone will want to go there to do something. And that will be the real beginning of the commercial space industry, not the International Space Station.
Okay, now just to echo what Charlie was saying, I think that, and I have said that, I think that anyway the cooperation, we should not put a limit to the number of participants. I think that everybody is welcome. And by the way, we are already starting that on board the ISS. We ESA, and we have asked the partners to accept that what we plan is to open at least for a transition period the space station to the EU member states which are not member of ESA, just to start and associate more participants, and the partners they have accepted. So all that should be. It's our interest to have that as open as possible. But obviously, this should not be to the detriment of the current partnership. That this is very important, and to the detriment of those who have invested to develop the space station. So provided we respect these two conditions, for the rest, I think that we should welcome more and more participants on board the space station and to any other joint venture we can have together.
Right. It sounds like there's ways not only for being involved in current space programs, but helping nations that are emerging in terms of benefiting from the applications of space. Right. One of the questions here, and I know we're coming down towards our timeline, are there any plans to collaborate in projects related to the detection and deflection of potentially hazardous asteroids? So as a way of protecting planet Earth from what might have killed off the dinosaurs, I guess, are there any plans that ESA and NASA have for detecting and deflecting those?
We have all talked about it individually, and I think you will find that there will be more collaboration in America's national space policy that we unveiled this summer. Planetary protection in the form of defense against near-Earth objects and the like has become very important. And I think the only way we're going to effectively do that is through international collaboration and partnership. Many of you have heard Roscosmos, Mr. Permanoff, talk about it quite a bit. I know Jean-Jacques talks about it. You don't hear me talk about it a lot because I have people like Tom Jones and Rusty Schweigert who do all the talking about it for me. But it is something that's very important, and it will be a challenge that we will tackle through our international partnerships.
No, it's part of the future of planet Earth. Speaking of dinosaurs, I think that the asteroids are certainly important for us not to become the dinosaurs, and certainly the near Earth objects are part of the threats for the future of planet Earth, and we are working on that. Part of the space situation awareness that we have started. The near Earth objects are part of these activities, and I fully agree with Charlie. I think that this is a global challenge. This is the United States or Europe will not save individually from a problem of asteroids. So I think that we have to work all together for that.
Right. Final couple of questions that I have to ask. There's a lot of young professionals here, a lot of people who are starting their careers in space. What sparked both of your interests to get involved in engineering and launch and working at the space business? And same thing for both of you. What got it excited? What got you wanting to be in the space business?
What I wanted to be when I have started? Well, I must say, I have never asked myself the question, what should I like to do? I must say that, as I said many times, and this is true, you can check, I have entered the secondary school at 10 years old on the 1st of October, 57. And to celebrate my entry into the secondary school, USSR has launched the Sputnik just a couple of days later. And I have got my engineering degree on the 20th of July, 69, and to celebrate that, United States have put Neil Armstrong on the moon, meaning that I am bound by the space events. And when I was a student, I was spending my nights with some of my friends to listen to the Apollo projects and so on, because they were always doing that during the night in Europe. So but we enjoyed that very much. And so I am in space since October 57, and I am still there, and I have no intention to quit, as you know. So but for me, it's a natural thing, and I am an engineer, and I have started to work on propulsion because I think that this is the basics of space. Access to space is the starting point, and I must say that mastering fire when you are working on propulsion is something great. The only thing that I have not done is flying in space. I have been selected to be an astronaut, but I never flew, and unfortunately the chances are decreasing by every year. But okay, still ready.
In my case, and I won't bore everybody with my story, I'm one who never dreamed of flying in space, never dreamed of flying an airplane. In fact, came out of high school in Columbia, South Carolina, going to the United States Naval Academy because I wanted to wear the uniform. And it looked good, and girls came around. So mine was a very immature, naive reason for going where I went, but that was the beginning for me. Through subsequent steps, I found myself in flight school, something I said I would never do. Fell in love with flying the very first time I got in an airplane. And I tell you, one of the things about my job is, and most people who fly airplanes or work around the space program, we are privileged to do something for which we would pay. If we thought we could get away with it, we would pay to be allowed to do the work we do. But you got to eat. So, but I have been that way all my life. I have enjoyed something that other people would kill to do. I ended up in the space program almost on a dare from a hero of mine, the late, great Dr. Ron McNair, who was one of the members of the class of 1978, the first space shuttle astronaut selected. And we had grown up not very far from each other, did not know each other. He asked me if I was going to apply for the space program as a test pilot. I said, not on your life. And he said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Why not? And I said, I wouldn't get picked. He said, how do you know? And so I responded to the challenge, and I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get selected. So I've been blessed in my life in doing different things. I didn't I didn't plan this. It just, God worked well for me.
Yeah. For me, it was not even a plan. It was natural. Yes. I must say, I never asked the question. I never asked myself the question. I think that this was just a natural thing.
I'm getting our folks to indicate I'm down to a couple of minutes, and so I need to get down to our final question. It's gone very fast, this discussion. Again, young professionals and the students, both of you emphasize heavily that it's about getting people ready for stepping up. And what advice do you give to young people who want to get into space? And what do our organizations do to help make that happen?
Mine is a really weird answer. I tell people, forget it.
Okay.
And when I say young people, when I talk to a high school or a college student, I really do. I say, forget it. Focus on learning and getting everything you can in your brain. Do what you do incredibly well, and then once you feel like you're the best at your job, then apply for the space program or do whatever. So I take a different tack than most people. Yeah.
Okay, so learning, just enjoy what you're doing.
I tell them to
do
be the best
studying,
that they can
learn,
do, and
be
then
the best.
tell everybody they want to
see
go
where
to
it
space.
goes. Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think that again in space we need the best, and I think that those who want to work in space they must be the best, because the challenge ahead are even much more difficult than the challenge that we have taken ourselves. So that is certainly the first advice, and the second one is to take pleasure. I think that you cannot work in that domain if you are not taking pleasure. It's difficult. I have difficult times being a Director General of ESA, but I take pleasure, and that this is maybe the only way to keep sanity, as you said before. And number three, think and act global. I think that working in space, you have to work on global issues and at a global scale. I think that this is not anymore something for US, for Europe, for Russia, for China. This is something for everyone. And I think that everything, and what we are doing here at IAF, putting the students from a lot of different nationalities already now talking to each other, working and thinking together. I think that this is certainly the best thing that we can do, Charlie, our colleagues and myself, to make sure that the young generation will think and act globally.
Okay, so be global, be competent, and love what you do. And then you may grow up to be NASA administrator or the ESA director, and enjoy it all. Anyway, I've been having a wonderful time in this discussion. It's been very pleasurable for me. I hope you've all enjoyed having Jean-Jacques Dordain and Charlie Bolden with us. And so let's thank them. And appreciate it. And we'll let you get on to your next meetings. Thank you very much.